Let's practice resolving vectors into x and y components. A vector is a force, velocity, distance, anything that has a direction. If you look at the vector in terms of a graph, then the x-axis, if you remember your unit circle, the x-axis is 0 degrees, 90 degrees, 180, and 270 degrees. When we're finding the x and y components, we look at the angle of the vector. You draw the diagram, and what happens is this becomes your hypotenuse. So 12 meters is now the hypotenuse. Turn your vector into a right triangle. And now you have a hypotenuse and an angle. In your math class, you learned trig functions. And those trig functions are sine, cosine, and tangent. The sine of theta, which is the angle, is the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine of theta is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. And the tangent of theta is the opposite over the adjacent. Now, look at your triangle in terms of sides and identifying the sides. This is the hypotenuse. From this angle, this side is the opposite side, and this side is the adjacent side. My theta is 30 degrees. My hypotenuse is 12 meters. The units don't matter. What matters is the number associated. And then to find the opposite side, we're going to take the sine of 30 is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. So you take your calculator and you plug in sine 30 times the hypotenuse. And that gives you the opposite. So this side is 6 meters. Okay? When you plug in sine 30, you get 0.5. 0.5, to solve for opposite, you multiply by the hypotenuse. Multiply both sides by the hypotenuse. 12 times 0.5 is 6. Now, the opposite side is running vertically, which is the y direction. So the y component of this triangle is 6 meters. You cannot always use sine for the y and cosine for the x. You have to look at the triangle and determine which side is the x component and which side of the triangle is the y component. To find the adjacent side, you use cosine. Theta equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Plug in your numbers. Cosine 30 equals adjacent times divided by 12. In your calculator, you do cosine 30 times 12. And the x component is 10.4 meters.